This is the disturbing Discord iceberg. Tier 1, the Lewdest House. Imagine you're a moderator in a server dedicated to NSFW content, an adults-only space where people write out explicit scenarios and share artwork that would get you fired if your boss accidentally saw your screen. One day, someone requests to join. You're watching the staff channel when the owner pulls up her profile. She's 17. You expect her request to be declined, but instead, she gets approved. And just like that, a minor is in an adult server. And nobody seems to think this is a problem except you. This is the Lewdest House, a private Discord server that ran through the summer and fall of 2019. The server had 15 Splatoon content creators, including Lizzie Ratsicle, a community superstar with over 77,000 YouTube subscribers, and Ghost of Time 1, the guy who ran the server. For context, Splatoon is Nintendo's colorful team-based shooter game. Ghost of Time 1 and others made animations using the game's characters. The server was their NSFW hangout. Think explicit roleplay, graphic fan art, and custom 3D models for animation. Technically legal stuff if you actually verify ages and keep it adults only. Keyword if, but they didn't. Kids got in, and it wasn't like they snuck in or anything. Some didn't even lie about their age. Server members invited them in directly, and even set up roleplay channels specifically for them. In these chats, adults engaged minors in inappropriate roleplays where they typed out scenarios, wrote explicit dialogue, and requested that the minors describe lewd acts. Adults in the server also made fan art and graphic drawings based on the children and shared it around. This went on for months. You'd think someone would, be a responsible adult and shut the whole thing down, but no one did. Until September 2019. A group monitoring community misconduct called the 7 Deadly Boomers decided to act. They planted a spy inside the server who went in with the username Rosie the Octoling. For 4 weeks, Rosie just sat there screenshotting everything. User lists, roleplay exchanges, chat logs, you name it. They even caught Lizzie Ratsicle and Ghost of Time 1 approving minors. And Joffgray's 634, another moderator, inviting a 16-year-old named Genesis twice. Everything was documented, and then on October 27, 2019, at 2 a.m., the Dropbox went public with the title Lewd House Heist SFW. The server died within hours. Lizzie Ratsicle later apologized officially on behalf of herself and Ghost of Time 1, but the deed was already done. After the whole thing, their Twitter accounts vanished, their Discord profiles went private, and the Splatoon community had a new favorite cautionary tale. They called it one of the biggest scandals in community history, and honestly, they weren't wrong. The Beluga Server Incident. January 25th, 2023. A Discord admin pings at everyone in the staff channel and the message reads, "It is now against the rules to be gay. If you are gay, you have to decide if you are the top or the bottom. If you're the bottom, you are now a girl in a straight relationship. This will be added to the guidelines." The message was sent in Belugang, the official Discord server for YouTuber Beluga, who built his channel around comedic Discord skit videos and has about 10 million subscribers. The server has over 650,000 members and 30 staff members run it. The admin who posted that message was someone called Benji, and he's not just any moderator. He controls the ban appeals system, runs the server guidelines, and manages the spreadsheet tracking every moderator action. Fire him and the system would fall apart. After the post went up, other admins saw it and some decided to join in. Multiple administrators in a staff-only channel were now participating in what can only be described as outright homophobia for no apparent reason. Community members noticed and word spread. People took screenshots of the message and reached out to Blackwater Cat, the community manager. They argued the obvious. If a regular member had posted this, they would have been instantly banned. Staff should be held to the same standard, if not higher. But nothing happened. The message stayed up, and days passed. Then Discord's trust and safety team got involved. They sent an official warning saying Beluga's account had violated terms of service and community guidelines by posting dehumanizing or discriminatory content and was at risk of being taken down. The server went in full damage control mode. Staff channels got privatized. Staff Random turned into Staff Random 2, and Mod Chat became Mod Chat 2. The same conversations kept happening in those new channels, but now the locks were tighter and it was easier to bury the evidence. The staff who first reported Benji's message didn't get thanked for it. Instead, they had their roles stripped, and some were quietly pushed out of the events team altogether. Meanwhile, Rick, one of the head community managers, started getting pressed by worried members asking what was actually going to happen to Benji. Was he being demoted? Banned? Was anything going to happen at all? Rick admitted in leaked conversations that Benji's message had been wrong. Sure, he couldn't be removed because he ran most of the server's backend. He was too useful to lose, no matter what he said. So Benji and the staff who spoke up quietly disappeared, while Beluga just kept uploading. The Discord Cub server controversy. Imagine reporting a server hosting explicit content involving minors to Discord's trust and safety team, and the moderator who responds turns out to be part of the very community you're reporting. Instead of stepping aside or passing it on, they send back an official email saying the content is completely fine. In January 2019, a screenshot started making the rounds online. It showed an email conversation with a Discord trust and safety admin with the username TinyFeeks. Someone had reported the server's hosting cub content and was asking if it violated Discord's terms of service. For context, cub refers to adult-themed portrayals of animal characters with human traits that look underage. Discord's community guidelines explicitly ban content related to minors that are inappropriate, with no exceptions listed. The policy doesn't say only realistic minors or only human minors. It says minors, period. So why was an official admin saying it was allowed? People started digging and they made some damning discoveries. Turns out several members of Discord's trust and safety team were openly part of the furry community. Their bios listed furry servers, furry Twitter accounts, and showed activity in several online furry communities. Normally, that would be fine. People have hobbies, but their job was policing those same communities, and they were making exceptions to protect the content. When this information started circulating, it played a major part in triggering the #ChangeDiscord movement that exploded in February 2019. Thousands of users shared their experiences with inconsistent enforcement, selective bans, and reports being ignored for certain servers, while others got nuked for less. In response to all of the commotion, Discord released a statement. It was the standard corporate crisis response everyone has memorized by now. They said they take concerns seriously, that their policies are enforced consistently, and that they were reviewing internal processes. There was no acknowledgement that TinyFeeks' email was real, no explanation for why enforcement looked wildly inconsistent, and no consequences for the staff members involved. Just vague promises to do better, which usually means everyone should stop asking questions. #ChangeDiscord trended for a few more weeks. A handful of users left the platform. Most stayed right where they were, and eventually the controversy faded the way these things usually do, slowly and without any real resolution. Clapdaddie. What do you call it when a 20-year-old with 1.6 million followers seeks out trans teenage boys and asks them to book hotel rooms? If your answer is anything other than child mistreatment, you're wrong. In August 2019, a TikToker named Colton, username Clapdaddie, posted a 15-second video. He was wearing a suit, lip-syncing to audio, with scar makeup painted across his face. The caption introduced a character named JJ, a mob boss who runs a top casino and moves money for the mafia. It was dramatic, a little cheesy, and it worked. The video picked up traction fast. Other TikTok users jumped in. They made their own characters. Bodyguards, assassins, ex-nuns turned killers. Pretty much anything was on the table. They called them Mafia Original Characters, or OCs for short. Think collaborative roleplay, just squeezed into TikTok clips. People wrote backstories, filmed short scenes, and duetted each other's videos to keep shared storylines going. By December 2019, it was a full-blown community, with hundreds of creators and millions of views. Everyone knew everyone. Clapdaddie sat right at the center of it. By then, he had around 1.6 million followers. He duetted smaller creators, commented on their videos, and boosted people he liked, especially trans guys. He called them handsome, told them they were doing great, and offered to help grow their accounts. At first, it came across as him just being supportive, which is a good thing. Then March 2020 hit, and everything started to unravel. A cosplayer named Ava Lee, a prominent Mafia OC creator who had worked directly with Clapdaddie, posted a video. She said he had a clear history of fetishizing trans men and saying inappropriate things to them. She did not include screenshots in that first post, just the accusation. But she was a known figure in the community and not some random account, so it's safe to say that people were paying attention. After that first video, more people came forward. One of them was a trans minor named Lucas, with a username Vegetarian Water. He shared his experience publicly. Lucas said Clapdaddie talked about visiting him in Michigan and asked the then 16-year-old to book a hotel room for them to stay in together. Lucas said he felt uncomfortable, but he did not know how to say no. He posted screenshots from Discord showing Clapdaddie's messages. Others told nearly identical stories. They showed the same pattern over and over. Compliments and promises of collaboration, then requests for photos. Whenever Clapdaddie sends photos back, they were images taken from below the waist. On March 31st, 2020, Clapdaddie responded with a 7-part video series. His defense was simple. He said he talked to minors because he was on TikTok and in the cosplay community, and that he talked to everyone regardless of age. The compliments, he claimed, were meant to boost confidence in the trans community. He said he liked trans men and called it a preference, not fetishization. He described the conversations as supportive, not flirtatious. He also argued that any problems should have been handled privately instead of being brought to social media. What he did not do was address the hotel room request. He also did not explain the below-the-waist photos. Instead, he talked about being raised with good morals and values, and insisted the accusations were wrong. After that, Clapdaddie disappeared. His TikTok was deleted, and his Instagram went dark. There was no follow-up statement, and in the end, no accountability. Tier 2. Locked in a shed. Imagine walking into a shed. There's a bed, a television, and some cabinets. It looks ordinary at first, but then you realize there's a 13-year-old girl from Dallas inside, who's been missing for 9 days and somehow traveled 1,000 miles without her parents knowing where she went. In August 2022, Jorge Ivan Santos Camacho, a 34-year-old man living in a shed behind someone else's house in Lexington, North Carolina, starts playing video games online with a 13-year-old girl in Dallas, Texas. At first, it looks harmless. They talk while gaming. They chat about her day, school frustrations, and regular teenager stuff. He comes off as a friend, someone who listens. But that's the thing about grooming. It never shows up wearing a warning label. It doesn't feel dangerous while it's happening. Instead, it feels like friendship with someone who actually gets it. Over the next few months, the conversations slowly change. Camacho brings up meeting in person. She hesitates. He keeps pushing. Eventually, he offers to pay for her visit. The fee is nothing dramatic, just enough to serve as some kind of incentive. On March 1st, 2023, the girl decides to meet her online friend. She walks out of her apartment complex on Highland Road in Dallas and gets into his waiting car. She doesn't pack anything and she doesn't leave a note. There's no explanation for her family and no trail to follow. When her family realizes she's gone, they immediately file a missing person report, and Dallas police start pulling surveillance footage from around the apartment complex. The CCTV shows a vehicle passing through the area right around the time she vanished, and the license plate is clear enough to read. When they run it, it comes back to Lexington, North Carolina, which is over 1,000 miles away, roughly a 16-hour drive. Police dig into her online accounts next. On Discord, they find months of messages between her and Jorge Camacho. They track his vehicle's movements between North Carolina and Texas, and the timeline lines up perfectly. 9 days after the teenager disappeared on March 10, 2023, at around 6 in the evening, the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force in Texas reached out to the Davidson County Sheriff's Office. By then, they had a location. It pointed to 10438 Linwood Southmont Road in Lexington, a property with a shed out back, and the registered owner of the vehicle seen on camera was living right there. By 6:10 p.m., deputies were already watching the place. They waited until Camacho left the property, then pulled him over for a traffic stop. While some deputies questioned him on the roadside, others moved in and searched the property. Inside the shed, behind the house, they found the missing 13-year-old girl from Dallas. She had been there for 9 days. Camacho was arrested on the spot. He was charged with abducting a child, felonious restraint, human trafficking, multiple offenses involving a minor under 15, and indecent liberties with a child. His bond was set at $1.25 million. On July 17, 2023, Jorge Ivan Santos Camacho entered an Alford plea. He maintained his innocence while acknowledging the prosecutors had enough evidence to convict him, and he was sentenced to serve at least 20 years in prison. Ashton Garcia. You're scrolling through Discord when someone posts a link to a voice channel with the caption, "Watch this." You click the link. The audio comes through. Someone's calling 911, claiming his father is assaulting his mother and has a grenade. You hear screaming in the background. The dispatcher starts to sound urgent, asking for an address. All of a sudden, the chat lights up with laughing emojis and skull reactions. This is something called swatting. It's when someone makes a false report to emergency services, usually claiming a violent situation, so police show up armed and ready. Now, swatting wasn't invented on Discord, but Ashton Connor Garcia turned it into a Discord show. Between June 2022 and March 2023, the 20-year-old from Bremerton, Washington, made at least 20 fake emergency calls across 11 states in the US. Garcia set up Discord chat rooms specifically devoted to swatting, broadcasting his calls live to viewers who could comment in real time or pretend to be victims or perpetrators of the fake crimes. He'd use voice-over internet technology to spoof caller IDs and hide behind VPNs, then call emergency services with the same recycled scripts. A father holding the family hostage with firearms, a child shooting his parents, stabbing his mother, or taking advantage of female family members. The goal was to convince dispatchers to send SWAT teams, bomb squads, and armed officers to addresses where people had no idea police were coming. The Discord audience got front row seats to watch the chaos unfold. In Shaker Heights, Ohio, Garcia called to report a father holding his family hostage with a firearm and grenade. Police deployed a full response, only to find a 12-year-old girl at home with 2 adults. When the commander on site, Daniel Grispino, spoke to the caller, Garcia laughed and taunted officers, stating that he was hiding under multiple VPNs. Grispino later testified that the terrified look on the 12-year-old girl's face would stay with him forever. In Edmonton, Alberta, an 8-year-old boy and his mother were jolted awake by a team of law enforcement officers with rifles. 20 officers and 7 civilian staff members were directly involved in the response. In New Jersey, an elementary school was locked down on the first day of school. Over 19 officers were present at the scene, along with several others from a neighboring agency. None of these emergencies were real. All of them were SWAT calls sent to Garcia's Discord server for entertainment value. But swatting was only part of the business model. Garcia gathered personal information about victims and used swatting as leverage for extortion, demanding money, virtual currency, credit card information, and even adult photos. Nothing was off the table. In some instances, he made swatting calls at the request of his friends. Apparently, there was a market for hiring someone to terrorize strangers, and he was taking full advantage of that. According to prosecutors, Garcia called himself a terrorist and bragged about his activities. He even recruited others in an attempt to form a group of cyber criminals focused on swatting and extortion. In July 2022, the FBI received an anonymous tip that Garcia was using his Discord channel to broadcast the swatting calls. More tips followed, and at some point, Garcia got a call from a Pennsylvania detective informing him he was being investigated for making threats and false reporting, but he continued anyway. The FBI finally arrested Garcia at his Seattle residence on March 30, 2023. He pleaded guilty in January 2024 to 2 counts of extortion and 2 counts of threats and hoaxes regarding explosives. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. The Michael Dalipe murder. On August 23, 2024, Michael Dalipe steps outside his apartment in Dublin, California to meet someone at the door. His wife says a man named Nick is asking for him. Dalipe recognized the name, but not from work or the neighborhood, from Discord. They shake hands, witnesses see it, surveillance cameras record it, and then things get crazy. All of a sudden, the man who police later identified as Nicholas Palavera from Yuma, Arizona, pulls out a gun and shoots Dalipe in the head, point blank. Dalipe drops instantly on his doorstep, bleeding on the concrete. Palavera gets back into his car and drives away. Dalipe's wife, Cynthia, hears the gunshot from inside. She runs outside, finds her husband on the ground, and calls 911. So, who was Nicholas Palavera? And why did he drive 634 miles from Yuma, Arizona to kill someone he'd been talking to online for 4 years? In 2020, Palavera and Dalipe connected on Discord. They played games and occasionally had conversations. Dalipe's wife says they'd actually met Palavera in person a couple of times over the years at gaming conventions. But she didn't really remember him because most of their relationship was online. They had 4 years of messages, gaming sessions, and Discord chats between them. Then, sometime before Dalipe was shot, they had a dispute. Police won't say what it was about. Maybe they don't know yet. Or maybe they're holding it back for trial. What we do know is that whatever it was enough for Palavera to get in his car and drive 9 hours to Dublin. Less than 24 hours later, Dublin police tracked Palavera to a Walmart parking lot in Barstow, California. Halfway back to Arizona, the local police monitored the vehicle and pulled him over as he left. Dublin detectives then drove to Barstow, interviewed Palavera, and seized his vehicle for processing. Inside, they found the alleged murder weapon and the clothes he wore during the shooting. Palavera was taken into custody and transferred to Santa Rita Jail in Dublin. He was charged with murder, carrying a loaded firearm in public, and carrying a concealed weapon, and he's being held without bail. The trial is still pending and the case remains open, but police still haven't said what the dispute was actually about. Maybe it comes out in court, maybe it doesn't. We'll find out soon enough. Tier 3. Trafficked Runaways. Runaways don't usually disappear by accident. Someone finds them first, and a lot of the time, that contact happens on Discord. In 2018, a 17-year-old boy from Louisiana thought he'd found someone who understood him. Her name was Eleanor McGlamory, and she was 56 years old. She knew his family, so when she reached out to him on Discord, it didn't feel random. For months, they had regular conversations about his interests, his frustrations at home, and all the usual things teenagers discuss when they're looking for someone who gets it. McGlamory was patient, supportive, and most importantly, she was always there when he needed a vent. Eventually, she floated an idea. Why not come to Florida? You don't have to deal with all that stress at home. It'll be better here. The kid believed her. I mean, why wouldn't he? She knew his family, and she'd been talking to him for months. As soon as she managed to convince him to make the trip, McGlamory set everything up. She even got a 34-year-old man named Curtis Gruwell to drive all the way to Louisiana, pick him up, and bring him back to St. Petersburg, Florida. When everything was in place, the boy just vanished. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, and he didn't leave a note behind. His family woke up, and he was just gone. They reported him missing, and that's when Louisiana authorities started piecing it together. They worked backward through his online activity, pulling Discord chat logs and subpoenaing records from the platform. They finally traced him to a location, Silver Lake Mobile Home Park in St. Petersburg, Florida. In 2018, police arrived at the mobile trailer. Inside, they found the missing boy, along with another teenager and 4 adults. Both boys were sleeping on bare mattresses surrounded by animal cages and feces. One of the perpetrators, Mark Dennis, claimed the second boy was his son, but couldn't provide any documentation to prove it. When investigators ran the boy's information, they discovered he'd been missing from Marion County for a year. He left home in May 2017, leaving behind a note asking his family not to search for him. The 17-year-old from Louisiana was returned home. Police don't believe he was molested, though what exactly happened to him during those days in the trailer was never fully disclosed. The 16-year-old, however, had a very different experience. For nearly a year, he was used as an adult slave by the men in the trailer. He was assaulted repeatedly by Dennis, Gruwell, and their associates. He didn't attend school, and he didn't receive medical care. He just existed on that mattress, surrounded by animal waste, until police found him. 7 adults were arrested in connection with the case. They faced charges including conspiracy to commit human trafficking, interference with custody, battery, and possession of illegal material involving minors. The 764 Network. If you spent any time in the darker corners of Discord moderation discussions, you've probably seen the number 764 pop up. If you haven't, that's actually a good sign. It means some of the cleanup worked. The 764 Network was founded in 2021 by Bradley Cadenhead, a 15-year-old from Stephenville, Texas. He named it after the first 3 digits of his hometown zip codes, 76401 and 76402. Online, he went by the username Felix. By that point, Cadenhead had dropped out of high school and started spending most of his time online. A lot of that time went into figuring out how to threaten and manipulate minors into producing explicit material. Once he had it, he used it as leverage to blackmail victims into hurting themselves on camera. At first, he worked alone, but that didn't last. Soon, he started recruiting others, building a network, and setting up a hierarchy where status mattered. The material produced by victims became a kind of currency, and members competed to push things further in order to climb the ranks. The more harm you could convince someone to do to themselves, the higher your standing. By August 2021, the network had grown to a few hundred followers on Discord, and had spread to other platforms, including Telegram, Roblox, Snapchat, and Instagram. On October 25, 2021, police showed up at Cadenhead's mother's apartment in Stephenville with a search warrant. They had traced an upload of child material on Discord back to that address. On his laptop, investigators found images of victims who had carved tributes to him into their flesh. Cadenhead was arrested and taken into custody. That should have been the end of it. The founder gets arrested, the network collapses, and everyone moves on. That's how people expect these stories to go, but that's not what happened. Even 3 months after Cadenhead's arrest, 764 was still active, still recruiting new members, and still causing harm. On November 7, 2021, things escalated again. That day, on a snow-covered mountain in Kyrgyzstan, 25-year-old Samuel Hervey took his own life on camera. He was from Minnesota and had once shown real promise as a biochemistry student. Mental illness had slowly dismantled his life. His marriage ended, his studies stopped, and contact with his family faded. He had been traveling toward India for a Buddhist pilgrimage when COVID restrictions stranded him in Kyrgyzstan. What should have been a short delay turned into weeks in Bishkek hotels as his money ran out. Isolated and desperate, he turned to Discord under the username Asunder. A 15-year-old girl in Eastern Europe, using the name FMLK, noticed him. She was part of the 764 network. In the days leading up to November 7, she stayed in close contact with Hervey through private messages and voice calls, encouraging him and pushing him toward doing it on camera. That day, Hervey created a Discord server called Anhero Tempest, which is slang for someone preparing to die, and went live. More than 24 people watched. According to recordings later reviewed by the Washington Post, they laughed, cheered, and congratulated themselves as it happened. No one was arrested for Hervey's death. FMLK was a minor at the time and later told the Washington Post in 2024 that she regretted her actions. On May 16, 2023, Bradley Cadenhead was sentenced to 80 years in prison. He remains incarcerated in Texas. The network he created at 15, however, continues operating under new names with new leadership. University of California Gore raid. You're checking your computer science Discord server on a regular Tuesday at UC Irvine to see if anyone's posted notes from today's lecture when, all of a sudden, your screen fills with something else entirely. A video of a decapitated corpse being violated. Another video autoplays, and this time it's children being hurt and animals mutilated. More videos and more images continue to flood the channel. Your hands start to shake, and you feel your stomach turning. On January 9, 2024, at approximately 9 p.m., hackers began flooding UC Irvine-affiliated Discord servers with videos of human corpses being desecrated, decapitations, Islamic State bombing footage, and even violence against children and pets. The attack hit about 30 of the university's 500 Discord servers, exposing roughly 3,000 students, instructors, and alumni to content so graphic that some students were hospitalized with excessive vomiting, panic attacks, and traumatic responses. The servers that got hit included channels for mathematics, computer science, and biological engineering. These were the spaces where students shared lecture notes, coordinated study sessions, and asked questions about homework. In the days after the attack, some students reported being unable to sleep, and others developed panic attacks. The university offered mental health counseling for students, and the tragic incident got nicknamed the Gore raid. For a measly $1,000, the hackers promised to hold off posting videos for a month. Alina Kim, a computer science and engineering graduate who managed several of the larger Discord servers, considered it a joke. When the attack hit, Kim reached out to leaders of other large Discord communities on campus and created a private coordination server. They shared user IDs of the attackers so moderators could ban them preemptively across multiple servers. Within 24 hours, biomedical engineering student Viet Bao Tran had written a Discord bot that would automatically ban the hackers' accounts. Nearly 100 student moderators coordinated the defense. Kim and her group eventually broke into the hackers' Discord server, used the program to grab all 400 user IDs involved in the attack, and deployed Trans's bot to automatically ban them from all UC Irvine groups simultaneously. The counterattack shut down the raid in 4 days. Some Discord groups were taken completely offline as a precaution. Some were rebuilt from scratch, losing months of academic communications and resources in the process. But the hackers were stopped. Not by the university, which didn't manage the Discord servers and therefore couldn't protect them. And not by Discord itself, which took no immediate action. But by students who took it upon themselves to come up with a defense strategy in real time. Kim contacted the FBI's cybercrime division with evidence and user IDs. But the hackers had used VPNs and pseudonymous accounts, making prosecution unlikely. The university issued a statement emphasizing that it doesn't manage Discord servers or their security. They offered information security training and resources, along with encouragement to practice cyber hygiene, which is corporate speak for, "This isn't our problem, but we're sorry it happened to you." Students were left to rebuild their communities and try to unsee images that don't unsee themselves. Tier 4. The Blue Whale Challenge Discord servers. You're scrolling through your feed when a news story makes you pause. A 15-year-old in Texas was found dead, his phone still recording. Police say they found whale symbols carved into his arms and screenshots of tasks lists on his device. The article mentions something called the Blue Whale Challenge and says it started on a Russian social media site before spreading to Discord. Your first thought is the normal one. Poor kid, that's awful. You're about to keep scrolling when one detail sticks out. Participants are told to wake up at 4:20 a.m. Then it hits you. Your little brother has been waking up at 4:20 every morning this week. Suddenly, the story doesn't feel distant anymore. To understand how this even exists, you have to go back to Russia. In 2013, an 18-year-old former psychology student named Philip Budikin starts creating groups on VKontakte, Russia's largest social network. The names are vague and creepy, but easy to ignore. Sea of Whales, Wake Me Up at 4:20 a.m., and F57. At first, they look like moody teen communities, complete with sad posts and dark images. Nothing that screams danger, so nobody pays much attention. 3 years later, journalists investigating Tula and Ryazan start noticing patterns they can't ignore. Victims post strange messages shortly before dying. Whale imagery keeps appearing. Some scars shaped like marine animals, and a lot of them mention something called a curator. When reporters dig deeper, they find the same person behind multiple groups, Philip Budikin, and all of them fall under what's now being called the Blue Whale Challenge. In November 2016, police arrest Budikin in Tumen. He's 21 by then, and he confessed almost immediately. Claims he pushed around 16 teens to do it. So why did he do it? According to Budikin's own statements during interrogation, he believed there are two types of people in the world. People who have value to society and biological ways to cause only harm. He claims he was cleaning society of those he deemed worthless, specifically targeting depressed, isolated teenagers with low self-esteem. During the interview, he also admitted to being bipolar. When asked if he felt remorse, he said his victims were happy to die because he gave them warmth, understanding, and connections that were missing from their real lives. He was essentially playing God with vulnerable kids, deciding who deserved to live based on whether they'd follow his instructions to the end. The process itself is disturbingly simple. They add you to a personal server and introduce you to the Blue Whale Challenge. The rules are pretty straightforward. 1 task per day for 50 days. You have to complete each task, send proof, and tell no one. Disobey and there are consequences. By this point, the curator has your information, your address, your school, and even your family's identity. Day 1 is easy. Wake up at 4:20 a.m. Watch a horror movie alone. A few days later, carve a small whale into your arm. Every task escalates and isolates you further. Soon, sleep deprivation sets in and your judgment weakens. By day 40, you've sent them enough leverage to make leaving feel impossible. In July 2017, Budikin is sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. But the damage is already done. The blueprint is out there. Soon, Blue Whale-style servers start showing up on Discord. Private, invite-only channels with names like Quiet House and Sea of Whales. They don't dominate headlines anymore, mostly because platforms are quick to shut them down, but they don't disappear completely. The Apalachee High School shooting. On September 4, 2024 at 9:45 a.m., 14-year-old Colt Gray walked into his algebra class at Apalachee High School that morning carrying a backpack with an AR-15 style rifle inside. He sat through half the class before asking to go to the bathroom. When he emerged 10 minutes later, he was holding the rifle and he opened fire. Within minutes, 4 people were dead. Richard Aspinwall, a math teacher and football coach, was shot near his classroom doorway. Christina Ermi, another math teacher, was killed while her students watched. It was her birthday, and she'd brought cake and pizza to celebrate with them. 2 students, Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, both 14 years old, were also killed. 9 others were wounded before police reached the hallway where Gray was standing. He surrendered immediately when they got him. The thing is, this incident, as tragic as it was, didn't start on September 4, 2024. It started 16 months earlier on Discord. On May 21, 2023, the FBI's National Threat Operations Center received anonymous tips from Discord users, one in Australia and one in California, about an account threatening to commit a school shooting. One post from the account stated, "I'm committing a mass shooting and I'm waiting for a good 2 to 3 years." The same account shared screenshots of firearms and talked openly about plans for a future attack on a middle school. The FBI traced the account to Georgia and referred it to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. That same day, investigators drove to a home in Jefferson, Georgia. They found Colin Gray, 54, and his son Colt, who was 13 at the time. The email linked to the Discord account belonged to Colt Gray. Colin told deputies he didn't know what Discord was. Colt said he used it to have an account but deleted it months ago because people kept hacking it. The investigators showed them the email, but neither of them recognized it. The Discord account was created in April 2023, but Colt claimed he deleted his Discord months earlier in February, before the family moved. On top of that, the phone number linked to the threatening account had a different Georgia area code than the one associated with Colt. There were inconsistencies everywhere, so investigations couldn't determine whether or not Colt or Colin was behind the Discord account, so no arrest was made. The case was closed on May 23, 2023. 7 months later, in December 2023, Colin Gray purchased an AR-15 style rifle as a Christmas gift for his son. This was the same Colin Gray who had assured investigators back in May that firearms in the house were locked away, and Colt did not have unfettered access to them. 9 months after receiving the rifle, Colt carried it into Apalachee High School. Colt was charged with 55 counts, including 4 counts of malice murder, and he's being tried as an adult. His father, Cullen, was arrested the day after the shooting and charged with 29 counts of his own, including second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and cruelty to children. Those charges stem from knowingly allowing his son access to the weapon used in the shooting, the same weapon he had given him as a gift. His bond was set at $20,000, and he remains in custody. If convicted on all counts, he could face up to 180 years in prison. The Colt Gray shooting was horrifying enough, yet this wasn't the only time a student brought tragedy to campus. Took too much. January 4th, 2024 was the first day of school after winter break for the students at Perry High School, Iowa. They started coming in just after 7:30 a.m. Meanwhile, a 17-year-old named Dylan Butler was in the bathroom, assembling guns, and he was posting about it on Discord in real time. Dylan Butler arrived at Perry High School at 7:12 a.m., entering through the main doors like any other student. He was a senior at the school, so nothing about his presence raised concern. He headed directly into a restroom and remained there for about 20 minutes, just long enough to stay off the school's surveillance radar. In the months before the attack in late 2023, Dylan had been active on a Discord server called School Massacres Discussion, where he posted under the username Took Too Much. The server is exactly what it sounds like, a community dedicated to discussing school shootings, history, tactics, perpetrators, the whole thing. It's essentially a gathering of people fascinated by mass violence. Dylan was an active community member, and on January 4th, he told them what he was about to do. He put up a post that read, "At the school, ready for what's to come." 10 minutes later, he posted, "In the bathroom, gearing up, but I'm nervous." Shortly after, he started complaining about another student being in the bathroom. He wanted them gone so he could assemble his guns in peace. At 7:35 a.m., Dylan stepped out of the restroom into the school's common area and began firing. His first round of shotgun blasts struck Amir Jolliffe, a 6th grade student. The school's emergency alert system triggered quickly, and authorities were notified almost immediately. Despite this, Dylan kept moving through the hallways toward one of the exits. That's where the principal, Dan Marburgero, confronted him. Marburgero stepped directly into his path, trying to slow him down and give students time to get away. Dylan shot him. By the time police arrived, the situation was already spiraling. An officer had entered the building at 7:38 a.m. and began searching for the shooter. Less than a minute later, Dylan turned the gun on himself. He was pronounced dead by 7:40 a.m. In under 5 minutes, he had killed a 6th grader, critically wounded the principal, and injured 6 other students. Then he took his own life. Near his body, responders found a homemade explosive device that had not detonated. Principal Marburgero struggled for 10 days before ultimately dying from his injuries. Discord shut down the School Massacres Discussion server after the shooting, banned associated accounts, and issued a statement about not tolerating violent content. A lot of people said they were just doing damage control, but it didn't matter because it was too late for Perry High School. Tier 5. Bianca Devins murder. You're scrolling through Discord late at night when someone drops photos into the server. It's a body on the pavement and there's blood pooling on the ground. At first, people brush it off as shock content, calling it an edgy Photoshop job. Then someone in the chat recognizes her. She's in the server. Her username is right there in the member list, showing she was online a few hours earlier. Bianca Devins was 17, an e-girl with a presence on Instagram and Discord, active in communities around art, music, and aesthetics. On July 14, 2019, in Utica, New York, she went to a concert with Brandon Clark, a 21-year-old she'd met online. The nature of their relationship remains unclear, whether it was friendship, romantic interest, or something more complicated. But what happened afterward was documented with a kind of clarity usually reserved for evidence folders. After the concert ended, Clark drove Bianca to a dead-end road where the pavement turns to gravel, stopped the car, and slit her throat. Then, he arranged her body and photographed it from multiple angles. He posted the images to Discord first, uploading them to a server where both he and Bianca were members, with a caption that made it clear what he had done. Then he moved to Instagram, uploaded the same photos, and tagged Bianca's accounts. This meant anyone who looked her up, friends checking if she got home safe, family wondering why she wasn't answering her phone, would be directed to images of her death instead. While people were viewing and sharing these images, Clark remained at the scene, lying beside Bianca's body and posting selfies of his own complete with blood running down his neck and soaking into his shirt. He called 911 and kept his voice steady as he explained what he'd done and gave them the exact location. Then he lay down and waited. When police arrived, they found him conscious but breathing, still holding his phone. He'd wanted to die, but things didn't work out the way he wanted them to. During interrogation and his trial, Clark explained why he did it. He said Bianca had kissed another man at the concert and he felt disrespected. He eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a sentence of 25 years to life. Menhaz. Around midnight on July 28, 2019, Menhaz sent his friend a Discord message that read, "I just hurt my whole family, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life in prison if I make it through this. I hope that at some point I made you laugh. I hope you remember the good moments. I'm going to miss you all." So you can get the full picture. Let's backtrack a little bit. Menhaz Zaman belonged to a Discord community called Perfect World Void, named after the Chinese MMO Perfect World. He spent years there, gaming, chatting, and forming friendships that became more real to him than the world outside. Slowly, the line between his online identity and his real life blurred. After being accepted into York University in Toronto, Menhaz fell behind almost immediately. Instead of telling his family, he dropped out quietly and built a lie to cover the truth. For years, he forged transcripts, fake schedules, and school updates, making his parents believe he was progressing through an engineering degree. But the lie had an expiration date. His graduation was set for July 28, 2019, and as the day approached, the pressure crushed him. He had no degree, no plan, and no way to explain the deception, so he created a horrifying solution. He decided to murder his family. The day before his supposed graduation, he killed his mother and grandmother. Afterwards, he returned to Discord and began sending disturbing messages filled with guilt. When someone asked if he had gotten everyone, he responded, "Waiting for my sister in 5 minutes, dad in an hour." Most people in the server didn't take him seriously. They assumed it was some kind of dark joke, until he posted the first photo, then another, and another. That's when panic set in. Members of the community scrambled to figure out his location. Some checked the metadata and IP trail, narrowing it down to Toronto. A user from Minnesota contacted Toronto police and shared everything they knew. Meanwhile, Menhaz kept messaging the group. He said his family didn't deserve the shame of having a son like him, and claimed he killed them to spare them. Moments before his arrest, one of his friends asked what he planned to do now that he had carried out his plan. Unaware that officers were already closing in on him, he replied, "Eat junk food, see my ex, drink, smoke." Then, as the police breached the home, he sent his final message. "The police are here. Goodbye." Discord removed the server and all its mirrors shortly after. Menhaz was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. He later received a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 40 years. San Patricio County family murder. Someone in your Discord server posts photos with no context, just images. It takes a moment to understand what you're looking at. Bodies inside what appears to be an RV. There's blood visible on the walls and furniture. Then the realization settles. These aren't screenshots from a horror film or edgy shock content. The person who posted them is in the server. You've been gaming with them, and they just killed their family. 15-year-old William Quincy Colburn III lived in an RV at Arkansas Oaks RV Resort in San Patricio County, Texas, with his father, William Jr., his mother, Jana, and his 13-year-old sister, Emma, and 2 dogs. On September 15, 2021, just before 6:30 p.m., he took one of the family's handguns and shot his sister first, then both parents, and then the dogs. Why he did it, no one knows. Law enforcement never released a motive, and Quincy left no explanation. After the shooting, he opened Discord and started distributing photos. He sent them to multiple people across different servers, with the assumption that his audience would want to see what he'd been up to. The images went to users he'd been chatting with in gaming communities, but he didn't limit himself to just private messages. He posted in servers and made statements about what he'd done, along with threats to continue the violence at an area school. He was homeschooled and he didn't actually specify which school he meant to attack, but that didn't make things any less frightening. Discord users across the country began calling Texas law enforcement. People from different states were reporting the same thing. Someone they'd been playing games with had just committed murder and was posting about it online. Law enforcement from multiple agencies tracked Quincy to the RV park just after 1 a.m. on September 16th. They surrounded the RV and asked him to come outside. He declined. Then they heard a single gunshot and the sound of a body hitting the floor. Inside, they found Quincy dead from a self-inflicted wound, along with his parents, his sister, and both dogs. Tier 6. The Buffalo Top Supermarket Shooting. What's the standard operating procedure when someone announces a mass shooting to 65 people half an hour in advance? Apparently, nothing. On June 28, 2021, Peyton Gendron was a senior at Susquehanna Valley High School in Conklin, New York. During an online class, a teacher asked about his post-graduation plans. According to Governor Kathy Hochul, Gendron responded with something that should have been a red flag. His response was, "I want to murder and commit suicide." The teacher questioned him about it. Gendron said he was joking. The teacher reported it anyway, and the school called the New York State Police. An officer went to Gendron's home, where he repeated that it was a joke. Then, the police took him to Binghamton General Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. After a day and a half, he was released with no involuntary commitment, and no red flag order filed to prevent him from purchasing guns. He graduated 2 weeks later and fell off the investigators' radar completely. 5 months later, in November 2021, Gendron walked into Vintage Firearms in Endicott, New York, and legally purchased a Bushmaster XM15 AR-15 style rifle. That same month, he started using a private Discord server as a personal diary. Over the next 6 months, he posted more than 1 million messages, chats, attachments, videos, photos, and links. Materials that FBI agents later spent 3 months analyzing. In December, he announced his intentions on Discord, stating he wanted to kill people he called replacers. By February 2022, he'd researched zip codes with the highest black populations and selected Buffalo's 14208 zip code as his target. The following month, he visited a Tops Friendly Market supermarket on Jefferson Avenue in Buffalo, a location he'd chosen specifically because it was in a predominantly black neighborhood. He conducted surveillance with the diligence of a graduate student writing a thesis, mapping aisles, sketching floor plans, and documenting camera positions and security details. His Discord logs even tracked technical concerns about live streaming, bandwidth issues, connectivity problems between his phone and GoPro, and how to play music during the attack. On May 14, 2022, between 2:03 p.m. and 2:14 p.m., approximately 30 minutes before the shooting, Gendron sent 13 messages to 65 Discord users, inviting them to his private server. 15 people accepted the invitation. When they joined, they could scroll back through months of racist creeds, detailed attack plans, and reconnaissance notes documenting exactly what he was about to do. Everything was there, time-stamped and preserved like evidence for a court case that hadn't happened yet. None of them contacted authorities. At 2:30 p.m., Gendron arrived at the supermarket, wearing body armor and a military helmet with a GoPro camera attached. He carried the Bushmaster rifle, which he'd marked with racial slurs and the phrase, "the Great Replacement," which is a white supremacist conspiracy theory. He live-streamed the attack on Twitch. He shot 4 people in the parking lot, killing 3, then entered the store. In total, he shot 13 people, 11 of them black. 10 of them died. The live stream ran for about 2 minutes before Twitch shut it down. When police arrived, Gendron surrendered without resistance. On November 28, 2022, Gendron pleaded guilty to all state charges, including domestic terrorism motivated by hate, 10 counts of first-degree murder, and 3 counts of attempted murder as a hate crime. 3 months later, on February 15, 2023, he was sentenced to 11 concurrent life sentences without the possibility of parole. Robert Crimo. You're scrolling through Documenting Reality, a forum where people share graphic footage of death and violence. When you see a familiar face in the news, it's one of the most active users, someone who's posted thousands of times over the years with shootings, beheadings, and the usual catalog of human misery. Except now, his photo is plastered across every news channel. Police are hunting him down for mass murder. The whole thing started on the morning of July 4, 2022, in Highland Park, Illinois, a wealthy suburb about 25 miles north of Chicago. The town was holding its annual 4th of July parade, and families had lined Central Avenue with lawn chairs and American flags, ready for the celebration. Robert Bobby Crimo III, 21 years old, climbed onto the rooftop of a building overlooking the parade route and positioned himself with a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 rifle. At 10:15 a.m., he opened fire. 7 people were killed and 48 others were injured, including an 8-year-old boy who was paralyzed by a shot to the back. After the shooting, Crimo climbed down, blended into the fleeing crowd, and went to his mother's house, where he took her 2010 Honda Fit. He drove to Madison, Wisconsin, about 2 hours away, where he considered opening fire at another 4th of July celebration before deciding against it. He discarded his phone in Middleton, Wisconsin, and drove back to Illinois. Meanwhile, the police had launched a manhunt. They released his photo and description to the public, and hours later, an officer spotted him driving near Lake Forest, about 5 miles north of Highland Park. A brief chase followed before he was pulled over and arrested without incident. By the time they got him into custody, he'd been on the run for roughly 8 hours. Long before that morning, Crimo had been building an audience online. On Discord, he operated under the rap name Awake the Rapper and performed music that had been streamed millions of times on Spotify before the service pulled it down after the shooting. He maintained his own Discord server called SS, supposedly short for Sleepy Squad, his music collective. The server hosted fans, friends, and people who followed his music. Members shared memes and links to his songs, posted political content, and traded the kind of graphic material that reflected Crimo's fascination with death. The next time anyone heard from him, police were circulating his photo while looking for a mass shooter. No one knows why he did it. Law enforcement confirmed it wasn't racially or religiously motivated. Crimo pleaded guilty to all charges on March 3, 2025. 2 months later, on April 24, he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences, plus 2,400 years without parole. If you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the internet's darkest corners.